Hi, my name's Craig, and I'd like to talk about the other side of autism. The other side of autism is something that a lot of people don't think about, and it's the side of the family, the parents of the autistic child. When you go out in public and you see a child acting out or something, do you think that could be an autistic child, or maybe bad parenting? Well, I think a lot of people might assume that, and sometimes that's not the case. I mean, everybody knows somebody who has autism. It's not some new term. It's been around for a very long time. But do they really know autism? Uh, what is autism? Do you know? Uh, it's I don't think anybody really knows exactly what it is. It's a lot of things. Every child is different. That's on the autism spectrum. Do you live with an autistic child? Have you been around an autistic child? Do you spend any time with one? I want to give you an up close and personal look at the real autism and how grossly misunderstood it is by some people. And I want to persuade people to maybe think twice about judging children or parents when they see kids acting out in public. Personally, I've been attacked a few times by people that just don't understand it and aren't open to the understanding. They just make assumptions that you have a bad kid or you're a bad parent, and it's very hurtful. Part of the problem is because autistic children look normal, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not a problem that they look normal. It's just that they don't have any strange abnormalities about them physically. So one could assume a child that looks normal must be normal, and that's simply not the case with autism. You cannot see, and what you can't see, generally you can't understand, especially if you don't spend time with an autistic child. If I count the number of times people have given me parental advice on how to properly discipline my child, it's if only that stuff worked. Discipline doesn't work on a child that can't comprehend anything. I mean, you can't spank an autistic child; they don't understand why. It's beyond their comprehension. And then the point being, as a parent, I have to deal with rude people. My wife has to deal with rude people who don't understand, don't care, but have an opinion on everything. And it does wear on you as a parent when you have to constantly defend your child against people who just feel like they need to share their opinion with you. It's really not fair, and it's none of their business, but they do it anyway. And part of it, I think, is a lack of knowledge. Uh, Children with autism aren't understood very well. There's a lot of research that needs to happen to completely understand it, but when every child is different, how could you possibly understand the disease, the problem? It's it's way behind the curve. And then there's inevitable deflection from people that, is your child really autistic? He looks normal. He talks normal. And then again, you got to really take into consideration if you're judging people, it's not really fair to the parents or the kids. So autism does affect a lot of children. It's a pretty high percentage rate. I don't know the number off the top of my head. And and there's a spectrum for people that are on that. The spectrum is, as I said before, very wide and broad. It's from very low functioning children, such as my son, to very high functioning children. And some of the higher functioning children, they can talk, hold a conversation, they go to school, they can do academics, read, write, but they're really socially awkward, have a hard time making friends, things of that nature. So, and then of course, like I said, my son, who's low functioning, he can talk, but he doesn't make any sense when he talks. He has a repetition problem. He'll just repeat things over and over, loud outbursts, things of that nature. And I'd like to break the barrier with people and understand it's very frustrating. It's hard for me and my family to go out into public with my son because I guess it's a fear that people are going to be judging us. We can go somewhere, and if my son has an outburst, it's I feel a little bit embarrassed because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable around my son, but at the same time, I don't see why he needs to suffer because other people are rude and don't care. And then why do we care as in parents? That's another one. I mean, I don't know if I care what other people think so much as it just the constant attacks are really hard not to notice. People staring, people pointing, or even some of the people who are rude enough to come up and give parental advice. And you try and put on a strong face, and be strong because you got a child you're taking care of and you're doing your best. And sometimes it's not that easy. And day in, day out. My son's he's 11, and we've been dealing with his autism since he was at least 4 when he started to show symptoms of autism. And ever since then, it's been just an uphill battle trying to do anything. And it's not all bad. Going out in public is kind of a pain. I mean, it's having a child like that is very unique. It's an experience that some people will never have, and it's helped me as a father grow greatly. I I can't tell you the number of times I've had some funny things happen with my son that I don't think some parents will ever have to deal with in their whole life. And those experiences they're ingrained in me, and I'll have them forever. One of them was recently we went to a jumping trampoline place, and I was playing with my son, and we were seeing who could jump farther into the foam pits, and I got really far and ended up getting stuck. And he was sitting there with my year-and-a-half-old daughter, and then he decided to pick her up, and we let him pick her up because he's really a sensitive boy and he's very nice. And he was just kind of rocking her back and forth, and then all of a sudden he decided to throw her into the pit. and and I could see how that would seem a little odd, like, oh my gosh, bad parenting, but it's a big foam pit, it's not going to hurt a baby. But to see him do that, and then he laughed his butt off for about 20 minutes, it was quite funny. And that's something you probably wouldn't normally see a normal kid do, or they shouldn't do. But knowing my son, that's kind of his personality. He's tries to be funny, and he was very funny that day. Another thing, we we go to restaurants sometimes, and I could see why this might make some people upset. But when we're walking by people at restaurants, sometimes he'll try and reach over and grab food off their plate, and I always apologize, and it's always funny, but I got to keep an eye on him because he's very quick and he thinks it's funny. Um, and then there's the bad side of autism that my wife and I have had to live with, which is my son has a seizure disorder called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, which is basically a seizure disorder that's the onset of every type of seizure, from drop seizures, tonic-clonic. I'm not going to go into specifics of what the seizures are called, but that seizure disorder damaged his brain, and that's why my son has autism. It's hard to understand that you can be born with autism, and it's entirely possible that you can develop autism through brain damage, and it still be considered autism. It's like I said, it's so wide and ranging, and that's part of the what I like to plead to people is that autism is so much more than just a bad kid on the surface. These children they're kind of a victim in a way. Most of them were born with this. It's not their fault. It's definitely not their parents' fault. It's not something you can teach a child to be better at. An autistic child, no matter what I do, he's never gonna learn to read or write. Not on any kind of scale that would be measurable. He can copy his name or something. But I mean, the point isn't that. The point is that he's going to be 4 years old mentally for the rest of his life, and there's no discipline nothing a person can do to change that. And he's going to have to go in public and be around people, and he's socially awkward, and it's just the way he is. He doesn't mean to be that way, and I wish people could understand that just because a child is strange or weird when he's 11 or 12 years old, or even older when he gets to be in his 20s or 30s, it doesn't make him a lesser of a person. He's mentally handicapped. He has a mental, disability. And if people could understand that you just don't look at a child and say, well, he looks normal. He must be. and don't be so rude about it. And if you really are concerned or want to know what's going on, maybe talk to the parent, like myself. If you really want to know, I mean, I'll tell you stories for days, and I'm sure any other autistic parent will too, because we would love to talk to people. It's really hard to take a child out in public like that and make friends, because he scares people off. They don't know what he's doing. He makes weird sounds, and the other kids don't understand him, and it's hard, you know. And it's kind of a lonely life for parents. The only other people that we really talk to are the people who have autistic children, because when they see a kid that's acting like their own kid, it's like there's an autistic parent. I can talk with them, and it's kind of strange, but it's kind of how it goes. So, in closing, autism isn't something you can even really explain. I just like to persuade people that don't be afraid of autism or autistic children. Don't be afraid of their parents. If you if you're scared of them or don't want your kids to be, it's not contagious. They're not going to hurt you. It's just like any other child, just like any other parent. And stop judging each other so much. We're all trying to just get by in life, and it's hard enough when you've got a kid that is never really going to fully develop. I mean, I'm gonna have my son with me for the rest of my life, and while that sounds like a blast, it's probably going to be a real pain in the butt at times. But I love my son, and I'm going to do my best, and just like every other parent would. So we're all human. So keep that in mind. Thank you.